I wanted to start by saying that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples, and I, of course, am from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Chippewa people, and the Mississauga of the Credit. And everything we do at the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is really embedded um, with an intersectional lens, and that means thinking not just about women as a homogeneous group, but also thinking about the particular issues that Indigenous women entrepreneurs face. And a number are here with us today to talk about their experiences. Some of you also know that the university that I work at, now called Toronto Metropolitan University, changed its name as part of its commitment to truth and reconciliation. And it's worth noting, I think, as well, that we have in the room Tamara Termitis, who was the um, lead negotiator for the Government of Canada around the residential schools agreement, as well as truth and reconciliation. So we have lots of people in the room today with lived experience and also who have been allies in moving the agenda forward. So thank you very much for joining us today. I wanted to introduce the minister, who, for many of you, needs no introduction because I know many of us have worked with her now for a number of years, not just in her current portfolio as the Minister of Women and Gender Equality as well as Small Business, but in her previous roles as the Minister of Small Business. She was also for a time the whip for the Liberal Party. And I just have to say, I don't get that. I can't imagine Minister Rechie Valdez going around scaring people into doing what the Prime Minister says, but I'm sure you did it well. I'm sure you did it well. Um, I think if she were to write a book, it would be called From Banker to Baker because she has a great story about her career in financial services and how she decided to try her hand at entrepreneurship. She's also been a uh, host of a cable and television program, and she's the member of parliament for Mississauga Streetsville. And I know she spends a lot of time working on behalf of her constituents, as well as working on behalf of women and small businesses across Canada. And if you follow her on LinkedIn, um, I have no idea how she does as much as she does. So we're very, very lucky to have her. We're very, very lucky that she has made the time to join us today because she has a big agenda and has to run away very quickly. And I know when she finishes speaking, you're all going to try to mob her, but you have to recognize that she really does have to get back to the House to do her day job. So with that, Minister Valdez.
Wow. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? No, 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 I will not accept that. I came here for some femme energy. Let's try that again. How are we doing this morning? Okay. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Thank you so much for welcoming me today. And thank you, Wendy, for that wonderful introduction. She knows me well, as you can see. And thank you to the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub and the Diversity Institute for bringing us together again for this important conversation. And I want to wish you all happy National Women's Entrepreneurship Day. This is a full circle moment for me because when I was a member of parliament, I had the opportunity of tabling my very first private member's bill. And my private member's bill was to create November 19th of every year, National Women's Entrepreneurship Day. So it's very, very timely. Our government has been very proud to support the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub since 2018 through the Toronto Metropolitan University. Together, you've built one of the most comprehensive networks and data platforms for women entrepreneurs in Canada. So I want all of us to take the time to acknowledge this incredible team who is with us today. The insights you provide are invaluable. And as minister, I'm committed to listening to what you're seeing on the ground and bringing that perspective to the decision-making table. As Wendy has already described, and some of you already know my story, which is one that, let's just say, is a very unconventional path to get here. 15-year corporate banker, thinking that was it for my life. And then doing something crazy audacious, which was baking my daughter Cassidy's first birthday cake, which then catapulted me to discovering my creative passion and eventually becoming a self-taught baker. The part of the story that I leave out often is after I built my first business, baking cakes, traditional desserts, eventually I made my way to open my second business. So I went from one humble 2-tier pink vanilla fondant cake to eventually opening a line of fusion dessert pastries, which ended up in 2 national grocery stores in Mississauga. And so the hustle is real. And I did that all while taking care of Kyle and Cassidy, all while juggling it all. And then right before politics, the real dream for me was finally opening and owning my own brick and mortar store. Well, so I was in the process of, literally in the process of finalizing the development of these 2 stores when I got a call to run for public office. Trust me, I said no first. Excuse me, I am busy in the middle of construction, but I said yes. And I chose myself. And I ran for public office, put my name on the ballot, and literally the rest is history. And I share that story because whether you're an entrepreneur or a dreamer or someone that just has so much passion, it's amazing what that drive can really do. And so running that business while raising my 2 kids has really taught me and showed me how much ambition really matters and how it drives and creates and supports entrepreneurship. But I also discovered in that journey all the barriers and challenges that entrepreneurs face that still exist today, especially accessing capital, networks, and mentorship. Those experiences have really shaped my role, whether it was as a small business minister or now as women, supporting women and gender equality, supporting small businesses, and supporting tourism across Canada. So when I sit at the cabinet table, I'm thinking about the women founders who are scaling their companies, women entrepreneurs who are ready to export, and the women with the innovative ideas who are still being overlooked and often underestimated. And these aren't just challenges, these are barriers that limit Canada's growth. So closing that gender gap in entrepreneurship isn't only the right thing to do, we know that it is the smartest economic thing to do as well. And we cannot build the strongest economy in the G7, which is the Prime Minister's vision, without the full and equal participation of women and gender diverse people. So through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, which is why you're all here today, we're breaking down those barriers and opening doors to capital, to those mentorship opportunities, networking. And I really wish I had this when I was an entrepreneur. So you all get to benefit from that now. Training, networks, and through our Women Entrepreneurship Strategy to date, I'm so happy to share that through $7 billion of an investment, we've helped support close to 500,000 women entrepreneurs across this country to access the support they need or to scale their business. We've also taken action to make participation in the workforce fairer and more accessible, which we've heard loud and clear for women. And that is why through our Canada's $10 a day childcare, expanded parental leave options, and our Pay Equity Act, this will ensure that we're able to close the gender gap. These measures are making a real difference. They really are. And I've heard countless stories of people who have shared these stories with me. And so good news, I'm standing here saying we passed our budget. So through Budget 2025, this builds on that foundation. It invests more than $380 million to advance women's economic equality through programs like the Women's Program, so organizations continue to help women enter, stay, and thrive in their workforce. Economic opportunity also depends on their safety. And through our budget, it invests more than $220 million to prevent and address gender-based violence. Last night, I joined a forum which really spoke to very powerful stories about the gender-based violence that women face across this country. And these supports are inclusive of women, especially Indigenous women and underserved communities across our country. It also makes historic investment to double the pace of housing construction because we know that women who are facing violence need to make sure that they have transitional and affordable housing to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and their families. Together, these measures are about ensuring women have the stability and security to pursue their goals. Budget 2025 also strengthens tools that help women-led businesses grow, and I'll talk about that a little bit, which is $46.5 million through the SME Export Readiness Program and $68.5 million to expand Can Export so that more women-led companies can reach new markets with confidence. And with our new productivity super deduction, we're making it easier for small businesses to invest in technology, in equipment, and innovation, including artificial intelligence. All of these investments share one goal: making it easier for women entrepreneurs to take that next step, just like I did. When women have the tools, the capital, and the opportunities that they deserve, there is no limit to what we can build together. And none of this progress happens without the women who are leading the way in this country, in our communities, and across Canada. So to every entrepreneur, leader, and partner in this room who I have the pleasure of working with, you are creating jobs, you are driving innovation, and you are strengthening communities. But you're also showing young women and girls like Cassidy across Canada what is possible. So I want to say thank you again for this incredible opportunity. It's so good to be joined here at Rideau Club with all of you. Thank you and merci. Okay, perfect.
I always feel like this is as close to Oprah as I'm ever going to get.
Wendy, you are our Oprah.
When I get a chance to talk to the minister. So I wanted to just say again, we really appreciate all the work you do, and I know that you appreciate the work that folks in the room have done. And I wondered just how many people here have been involved in women entrepreneurship strategy events and activities before? How many of you see yourselves as part of the West Network? And how many of you haven't previously been involved in activities? And how many of you have never been in the room with the minister previously? Yeah. So I think a lot of folks in the room are aware in sort of a general way of the women entrepreneurship strategy and the fact that and both Tanya and Tamara were at the W20, and there's no question that our approach to developing women entrepreneurs is really regarded as global leadership because of the whole of government approach that's previously been taken. But do you want to just remind us of some of the key elements of the strategy and what's in place to support women?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think in 2018, when we developed the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, we developed it with women, for women. And I think that's really important because we developed with partners that knew what women entrepreneurs needed. And so the three pillars there's three pillars. One is the Women Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, incredible. And I think for the delivery partners that we have who provide these loans, what women really need are flexible options for us. So it's one thing to qualify and get the loan, but then life happens. And so what our delivery partners do is they create that flexibility so that women can pay back their loans, and which ultimately leads to their success. So I think that's the differentiator between the Women Entrepreneurship Loan Fund that I don't get a chance to talk about. Second is the women ecosystem partners. And so we have many partners in the room who are benefit from the women ecosystem funds. What this does is, look, as an entrepreneur, definitely need the funds, important. But you know what we also need? We also need a support ecosystem. And so right across the country, we invest in our ecosystem partners that then can help women on the ground, wherever you are across the country. And I mentioned it already, whether that's through mentorship, the programs that they create on the ground, and it's really to help build and connect women to other opportunities. And often I hear entrepreneurs, and I used to be guilty of this. I used to work very much on an island. I don't know if anybody's guilty of that. And often when you work on an island, while you're great and you're effective all on your own, it's actually more important when you reach across, meet someone new, create collaborative opportunities, and then you build your network so that when you're making a decision, whether it's to purchase a product or a service, guess what? Your network's right there. And through that ecosystem that you've built, Wendy, and through connecting people, we actually get to work with each other, which then ultimately strengthens all of us. And I mean, with your leadership, the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub speaks for itself. And as a government, I feel like the WEKH is what helps keep us accountable. Because if you don't track the progress, and often whenever programs launch, they're not traceable, there's no data. But we have amazing teams who manage and track that data to make sure that our programs are actually working for women and helping kind of build into the future and ultimately strengthen our economy. So I kind of wanted to kind of talk through what the women entrepreneurship strategy does as a whole and how those three components work together, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And at risk of being corrected by our friends from Stats Canada in the room, I do think that at a macro level, we see results because when we started, remember, I think it was 15.6% of small, medium enterprises were owned by women in this country. And now it's almost 20, right? And of course, depends on which set of data you use. If we look at it's one of the things I'm so proud of with the Liberal government, frankly, was the restoration of the long form census and a lot of the work that has been done by Stats Canada and others to collect disaggregated data, because we can also show, and this is for me really exciting, that certain segments of women entrepreneurs are growing really, really fast. Black women entrepreneurs, for example, now are 38% of Black entrepreneurs. Indigenous women entrepreneurs are much more than the general population, close to 30% of entrepreneurs. Filipino women entrepreneurs are overrepresented, as are Chinese women and other ethnic groups. And in the current environment, our immigrant diaspora is our competitive advantage, right? Like, we're trying to enter those new markets that your team worked hard to get free trade agreements with. And there's no greater superpower than people who have intimate knowledge of those markets. So what we have now, I think, that we didn't have when we started, is a much more detailed and nuanced understanding of what women entrepreneurship in this country looks like, who's benefiting from programs, and who perhaps still needs a hand up. And the other thing that we're going to talk a lot about today is the sectoral perspective, because sometimes everybody gets lumped together. And obviously, you would know that the needs of women who are trying to run a bakery are very different than the needs of Tira Fraser, who runs an airline, are very different from the needs of women who run construction businesses. So we're going to try to dig in on that in more detail. We were at, many of us in the room, I think, were at the budget announcement and the reinvestment, the announcement about the reinvestment in wage. But we see, as I think you do, lots of other opportunities that were announced in the budget. And many of you have heard me say this, that, I'm always happy to have special pots of money for women. It's great. But the federal government currently spends $30 billion a year on goods and services, and we want our share of that as well. And today, we have representation from WEBE, we have CAMC, we have a number of organizations that really specialize in trying to help entrepreneurs get access to those kinds of procurement opportunities. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the national projects in the Buy Canada program in particular, and how you think women in the room and elsewhere can benefit from those.
Can't you just like listen to her all day? I can. Thank you, Wendy. But like before I get into that part, just to touch on what you were talking about earlier, the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, the Black Entrepreneurship Program, the Indigenous Entrepreneurship Program, the 2S LGBTQI plus Entrepreneurship Program, the whole intention of all of them was to level the playing field for all of us, to make sure that regardless of where you come from, you have equal opportunity. So I just wanted to touch on that.
And can I add, sorry, I asked about Buy Canada, but I also wanted to ask about trade diversification. OWIT's in the room and lots of other organizations that are pushing that too. So Buy Canada, trade diversification, where do women fit in?
Absolutely. So um, it's so exciting because I remember the last time I sat across from you, the world was very different and the world is different now. And what we're hearing from entrepreneurs broadly is the feeling of uncertainty as a result of what we're seeing with President Trump and his unjustified tariffs. We're in a totally different world. So you brought up two of the most important pieces within our budget that is going to be very transformative for entrepreneurs. So at a very, very high level, our Prime Minister has a vision to build this Canada strong. So how are we going to do that? You talked about two important pieces of it. The first is our Buy Canadian policy. I have been fighting for this for SMEs for a very long time, and here it is. So from a federal procurement opportunity, Wendy mentioned $30 billion of federal procurement. Our Buy Canadian policy ensures that we are prioritizing small and medium-sized enterprises across Canada specifically, and through all of our crown corporations as well. Meaning in our policy, our prioritization is SMEs. And to support SMEs take advantage of those opportunities, we've created a small and medium procurement program. And that's the bridge. Because I know how challenging it is being an entrepreneur going, okay, this is very daunting. Federal procurement, what does that mean? What does that look like? But it's really intended to make that connection. So a small and medium-sized enterprise, a woman entrepreneur who says, how can I sell my product or service to government? And it's making that bridge and that connection, which is tremendously important. Ultimately, what this is doing is supporting Canada and Canadian-owned businesses, making sure we can keep our jobs here in this country, as opposed to businesses wanting to go to the US, and I know how tempting that is. So that's a huge policy change. It's a dramatic shift, and it's going to be transformative. Second, what we're also doing is we've relied so heavily with the US. I'm sure many of you have stories around your, supply chains and how much you rely on them, shipping, importing, exporting. We need to remove our reliance from the US. We have to. And so how are we doing that? We currently have 15 trade agreements with different countries. But now we're also going to be focusing on diversifying that even more. And so the prime minister was in the ASEAN, and now he's literally in the UAE, the first prime minister like since the 1980s to visit the UAE. We're trying to create those opportunities with other countries so that those countries can import into our country, and we can also give us as entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs the opportunity to export. So then how as entrepreneurs can we take advantage of it? I spoke about two things that I've been advocating for. One is the SME Readiness Program, which will help, again, SMEs learn how to take advantage of those trade opportunities and build those connections so that you can export your products internationally. And Can Export is certainly able to do that. And then through EDC, Export Development Agency, can help us, again, bridge that. So these are programs I'm happy to share with you, to share broadly to the network. But this is two huge transformative things. So in conclusion, we're going to support Canadian businesses, and that includes women-owned businesses as well. And then we're also going to prepare you to take advantage of international opportunities as well.
Just out of curiosity, how many people in the room currently export or deal with international markets? Okay, we got some work to do. The other thing that I think is worth noting, and I learned this actually from Cassandra Dorrington, who leads the Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council, is when you think about doing work with government, when you think about procurement opportunities, it isn't that a women-owned small medium enterprise necessarily is going to be competing for the $3 billion bridge project. They might, but it's really about getting women into those supply chains. So sometimes the opportunities are as tier two suppliers to some of those big suppliers. And that's something government policies can really, really shape as well.
And I just want to make one connection because we have RFAQ in the room. So imagine through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, we helped invest in RFAQ, who have created a procurement program designed specifically for women procurement opportunities. And they're creating a tool called Maya, more to come. But through Maya, it'll connect women entrepreneurs with each other. So you can actually bridge that online. So more to come. And so through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, which we've invested in, they're in the midst of developing that. They're onboarding 15,000 entrepreneurs very soon. So more to come. And that will also then bridge those women entrepreneurs to the larger federal procurement opportunities. And those are the conversations that we're having right now.
As well as with the private sector. And Tanya Saba and I did some of the evaluations of Maya, and it's absolutely true. A lot of focus has been over the recent years, access to financing, access to loans, access to investors. But I would argue that access to customers is really transformative. And if we can tackle that, there's a lot more money in it than some of the other avenues we've been pursuing. So thank you very much for that. I think the other big thing, and this is very close to my heart, and I know lots of people in the room have been working on this as well. The government is making big commitments around digital transformation and the opportunities for artificial intelligence across the board. I mean, they've been announcing, for example, how they're going to transform government, how I saw a speech by Evan Solomon yesterday about how they're going to invest in SMEs, how they're going to make sure we don't lose our leadership globally as a developer of AI. The irony, and many of you have heard me say this before, the irony, which I refer to as the Canadian AI paradox, is we are leaders in the development of technology. I mean, Geoffrey Hinton, who the British trade or what was the consul general was arguing is British, and we argue he's Canadian, but we can fight that out. We call him a Canadian, won the Nobel Prize, the Vector Institute, the Mila Institute, the new Calgary Institute, Alberta-based AI center are recognized globally as leaders in the development of AI technology. And yet Canada is a laggard when it comes to the adoption of AI. We're towards the bottom of the OECD countries, both in terms of the use of AI as well as AI literacy and skills. And part of that is because we are a country of small, medium enterprises, right? The United States, 50% of employment is with large business. In Canada, it's 10%, right? And we, in my view, often focus on what the big banks say and the, what's it called? The Canadian Business Council, Canadian Council of Business, whatever, who are mostly large corporations. They are in the minority. Small, medium enterprises in Canada are where it's at. And I think often, I'd be interested in folks around the room, but often small, medium enterprises are so busy, especially now, trying to make payroll and keep the wolves from the door. They don't have time to think strategically about technology. They don't have the resources and the extra capital. They don't have the huge staff and skills and so on that are needed to really take advantage of the technology. So I was really interested to hear more about what your government plans to do to bridge that gap, because it's a massive opportunity. How many folks in the room are using artificial intelligence on a daily basis besides Tamara? Yeah. I mean, it's a massive opportunity both to improve efficiency, but also do more with less and look bigger than you really are. So tell us more about your strategies for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So shout out to Minister Evan Solomon. We have a dedicated minister on artificial intelligence. You just mentioned the opportunity that we have is ensuring that Canada does not lag or fall behind when it comes to artificial intelligence. And we'd have the National Regional Council here. There she is. So the National Regional Council is helping us with regards to how we're helping support, AI adoption for entrepreneurs through our AI compute strategy. So the shout out to NRCan. If you have any questions with how your business can, better leverage artificial intelligence, you can you can see it, Raheem. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Of national research, but only 1% in IP. And so thankfully under the minister's thankfully under the minister's mandate and the new changes under our government, we are actively shifting our focus in order to be able to respond. So we literally had that meeting just Thursday. So we're really working to respond to small firms and women in particular. So I invite all of you to come to me later today. And thank you, Minister, for giving me the opportunity to speak as well.
She didn't know walking in this room we'd make her really busy. So that is really the opportunity, and it's that connection point with helping our entrepreneurs on board, help our entrepreneurs leverage and adopt AI in their own individual businesses, because each of our businesses are very different. But we can use AI to help us become more productive, etc. Now, there's another side of AI I'd like to kind of address, which is more on the women and gender equality side. I recently had my conversation with my provincial and territorial partners out in the Northwest Territories early this year. And what did we talk about? AI and the impacts of AI on women. Because simply by us as women not using artificial intelligence at the same rate as men, that's also changing AI. And think about the impacts of women online through deepfake technology that's coming out there. So my concern with my other hat is not just how do we help entrepreneurs, but how do we keep women safe? And so that's something that I'm focused on with Minister Solomon, making sure that we can address the deepfakes and the issues with the rise of AI, and then what it's negatively impacting for us. And so that is something I'm actively working on as well. So I just want to mention to everybody here.
And I would just add a third leg to that stool, and that is around AI skills. Like, we're arguing that AI literacy is now as foundational as reading, writing, and arithmetic, exactly for the reasons that you mentioned. And what's interesting, because some of you know my PhDs in information systems, is AI has the potential to narrow or expand the digital divide, right? And for many years, we heard coding, 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 right? Play coding algorithms to babies in vitro so they would hatch able to code. You remember that, right? What's so interesting about generative AI in particular is it's true women are still underrepresented in engineering computer science. I've been working on those issues for 35 years. There are fewer women in computer science today than there were in 1989 when the Montreal Massacre occurred. Fewer women in computer science today than then. But with generative AI, it's the English major's revenge, right? You don't need a computer science degree. You don't need an engineering degree. You need to be able to basically construct sentences, queries, and think critically. And that's where women excel. So what's really interesting is when you look at the Gen AI gap between men and women, it's much, much, much smaller than what we would see if we were talking about coding, computer science, engineering, or any of those. And that's a massive opportunity if we can get people to stop the obsession with STEM only and recognize that we need more than STEM. We need people who understand organizational behavior, consumer behavior, ethics, and so on. So I just wanted to say, I think the third leg of the stool, it's AI for entrepreneurs, it's safety, but it's also how do we upskill our entire workforce and make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. So, last question. We're here today to talk about some of those sectors that women historically have been underrepresented in, but now are really staking their turf. And I think about things like construction or agriculture, where even within the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the percentage of women double. Trades. A lot of people think of trades as separate from entrepreneurship, but in fact, the recent research shows a lot of tradespeople have to run businesses. So when we're talking about the need for more women in trades, we have to think about more women in SMEs that are providing services. So tell us more about some of your strategies to address the needs of women in those non-traditional sectors.
Yeah, great question. I have a few comments. First, with our policies, whenever we're making decisions on anything that comes across cabinet, we need to make sure that we have a GBA plus lens. Through all our decision making, regardless of what we work on, we need to ensure that we do that analysis within each department to make sure that from an equity standpoint, women are always included. So back to, we spoke about the Buy Canadian and the trade diversification. One other huge priority for our government, you might have heard this, is our national infrastructure projects that we are developing right across this country. Billions of dollars that we're investing to make sure that we're able to build this country strong. And so with those major investments, whether that's, with the national infrastructure projects, we want to make sure that women are included. And what that ultimately will support are also the major industries that are suffering right now. There's steel, aluminum, lumber. And so what's the opportunity is ensuring that women in trades, women in construction, women in all those areas are supported. And through all of our investments, we're making sure that we have, that gendered equity lens so that when we're developing it, part of our strategy is inclusive of women. Let's take, for example, Build Canada Homes. We're going to be building more homes faster across this country. We're making sure that a portion of those homes are going to be for women, for example. And then we're uplifting. I know I've met with many women in trades through our, skills development, employment development, placement development. Again, we're very much ensuring that women are inclusive of all those opportunities. And if we do that, women will have jobs. Women will gain the skills that they need. Entrepreneurs will have the opportunity to participate, and then ultimately that will lift all of us up.
And I think it's we will be recording the discussions today, making some recommendations about what women working in defense, women working in infrastructure, women working in agriculture, women working in tech. I see Megan Coleman, who coordinates the Lab to Market network of tech incubators across the country. And she's got stories, if there are stories, about what women in tech need, women in AI, women in anything we can put on the list of stuff you're going to fund. We want to make sure that women get their share. So we'll have lots of rich discussions and I think recommendations to bring forward to ensure we achieve exactly what your vision is. And I think, it's really interesting that you now have responsibility for the GBA plus work of the government, as well as the work with small business. Because if we think about that whole of government approach and unlocking access to those resources across the government, you now have the tools in your toolkit to make that happen.
Yes, I do. So my ask of everyone in this room as you're having these conversations, this is where I need help. I've spoken to many of you as I came in this morning. You represent different industries, different groups. Your voices together can help us come up with the recommendations to make sure that when I enter cabinet, you can let me know what the opportunities are. I do not want to miss out any particular industry. I want to be inclusive, broad. You've mentioned so many of them, and so many areas where women are just so underrepresented. I'm a computer science grad, so I do remember what it was like graduating. There was literally me and maybe like 2 other people in a huge classroom filled with men. Corporate banking, same thing. Becoming an entrepreneur, same thing. But now we're showing up. So now that we're here, let's make sure our voices are heard. And the only way we could do that is through policy making and through those recommendations that can help strengthen our representation in all areas of our economy. So I want to thank you in advance for taking the time and lending your voice. We need those, we need those stories. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minister. Please, round of applause for Minister Rechie Valdez. And she really does have to get back to work. If you haven't spoken to her as she is running out the door, you can come and say hi, but she really does have to get back to the house. So thank you so much.